How's it going?
Jen, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Doing all right.
Yeah, I think at this point, just getting through the workday, getting through these meetings. No issues, no conflicts. It's a good day.
It's a great day when you can do that. Jim, I was looking for, I didn't see Edwin had not sent, I didn't see June's calendar in our emails.
I don't know. It's possible. There's a number of things. Let me try to follow up on that.
Okay. Hello, Patricia.
Hi, Pat.
Hey, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm good. I'm about to sign in online here.
Okay.
So how's everything going?
Everything's going good. Jim and I were just talking about that. Getting through meetings, the workday is a success. Right?
Well, what's today? Today's Wednesday.
Yep.
Yeah. Let me tell you, I thank God for the person who invented Zoom, and it took a whole pandemic for everybody to actually try it and work with it, but I love it.
That's
I
good.
could not go to an in-person meeting from now until forever. Oh, let me turn that off. There.
Thank you.
Yes. Yeah, because I've been working for city council since 2009, and I can't tell you, well, CB3 should know, you have meetings in various places, and then you have to go home at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night. If it's SLA, God only knows when you finish.
Right.
So, yeah, and everything, outside the streets have become very violent, very dangerous, scary, creepy.
Yeah.
I want to launch what is it called? Like
Yeah.
dare to the full subcommittee that we finish our meeting within 1 hour. This way we can hear the debate for the mayoral election.
Yes, good idea. But it's a short agenda.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm going to get the meeting started. Welcome. My name is Andrea. For any new faces, I'm the chair of the committee. And yes, let's see if we can get the meeting done in an hour, but we'll see. We have a couple presentations. I see Libertad here from the Clemente, and we're waiting for Ana Mari. But since we appear to have quorum, I will go ahead and get started with a roll call vote and approval of last month's minutes. And then also another housekeeping, if you're not a member of CB3, if you could, for the record, please enter your name and affiliation into the chat. So I'll go ahead and get started. Andrea Gordillo, yes. Olympia Kazi.
I want to say yes, but I must say I'm not sure I received the minutes. I'm checking for them.
Okay. Okay, well, I'll skip you then. I actually will.
You haven't submitted the minutes to us, actually. I just noticed all the emails you submitted to us, the last year's district needs, but maybe you forgot to submit the minutes to us.
Oh, that's true, actually. I did, and we were talking about this week. Yes, I actually did neglect to do that. So could Jim or Susan, could you advise on what
Sure,
I would do
just-
in this?
Sure, it's not a big deal. Just take roll call and then next month you'll vote on both minutes.
Okay, right, or whenever the next meeting is.
Right, exactly.
Okay. Okay, so then I'll take the roll call and I'll note that it's not an approval of the minutes. So Olympia Kazi,
Present.
Wendy Lee, not present. Tariq Ramos,
Present.
Thomas Rosa,
Present.
Ricky Wong, not present. Crystal Field, not present. Okay, all right. We will go ahead and get started. In full disclosure, Libertad will be presenting, and I will recuse myself as chair and have Tariq take over this part while Libertad chairs, or while Libertad speaks.
Andrea, I think that Crystal just joined us.
Yes, I believe so. I was just
Thank
about to
you.
do that.
Hi, Crystal, is that you? I'm taking roll call. Can I mark you as present?
Oh, do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, Tariq, you can go ahead.
Hi, Libertad. It's like, how are you? It's nice to see you.
Some faces that I haven't seen in a while from the,
I know.
yeah.
So I believe you're presenting on open culture. So I'll turn it over to you to present.
Thank you. So my name is Libertad Guerra. I'm the executive director of the Clemente Soto Vélez Cultural Center. I started my tenure here actually a month prior to COVID. So we are, for those of you that don't know, a Puerto Rican Latinx multicultural institution with a 30-year history of housing and promoting artists, independent cultural producers, and free access to cultural events. We are also home to more than 60 working visual artists, 4 performing arts venues, and 13 small cultural arts organizations and nonprofits that are mostly BIPOC serving. Thanks to Council Member Chin, the 2 streets that flank our building are designated open culture streets. And I'm here to present on 2 of the major open culture events that we will be hosting and that will open and close our summer season. Sorry for the back noise. The first one is around the corner. It's River to River Festival, which is widely known, started after 9/11. And, you know, in re-enlivening the city after a big major event that halted all events. And here we are again with River to River as this symbolic event. And we're very excited to be one of the host sites for the festival. We are a presenting partner this year. From the origins in the aftermath, as I was mentioning, of 9/11, now we're presenting in the context of the pandemic. This festival has long highlighted the fundamental role that creativity and all its forms play in the process of recovery, resilience, and renewal. To kick off the 2021 River to River Festival, we will be honoring the great jazz legend Wayne Shorter. Esperanza Spalding, Terry Lynn Carrington, and Leo Genovese will come together to celebrate Shorter with a performance in our plaza, which is our parking lot in most of the year. And this outdoor space faces Norfolk Street. The opening night sold out within 24 hours of being published. The open culture program will allow us to set up overflow with chalked circles on the street that allow for pods of people to sit within 6 feet of each other. To close out the festival, which will also include a series of screenings, online events, and concerts, we will be presenting the dancer and choreographer Nora Shipamur, who will be performing Nehanda, conceived as an opera, which investigates the myth of powerful spirit venerated by the Shona people, native of Zimbabwe and central Mozambique, who inhabits only women. Similarly, our team will be setting up an overflow with chalk circles as part of the open culture. So that's a major event to begin the kickoff of our summer season. And the other one that I would like to share with you today is the one that ends up the summer season in August, which is called the International Puppet Fringe Festival of New York. And it's one of the only puppet fringe festivals in the whole of North America that we produce together with Teatro Sea, who is one of our anchor theater companies, one of those 13 organizations that we house and provide subsidized space to. They are also the only bilingual theater company for certain New York. Many people say in the United States. The week-long festival draws award-winning international puppet theater to the Lower East Side during the second week of August. This year, we will be back-to-back. We will be back producing a hybrid festival so that audiences can join both in person and online. It features performances from acclaimed artists in the puppetry genre, art talks, film series, and original exhibits with companies from Europe, the Americas, and beyond within our ecosystem of galleries and theater venues, as well as La Plaza, the outdoor venue. The festival and its programming, including free community and concurrent events, Arte Pa' Mi Gente, which serves New Yorkers and its visitors by convening the most cutting-edge puppeteers and presenting their works in a variety of formats. The Puppet Fringe Festival will be using open culture to host a puppet block on Suffolk Street on August 14th. A variety of puppets will be lining the streets and stationed 6 feet apart from one another. This will be a great way for both young and old to interact with and photograph some beloved mascots and legendary puppets. There will be a small stage for skits and short performances for the puppets. A lot of these outdoor events will be free to the community. That's the Arte Pa' Mi Gente component. And I think there will be another day within the 5-day on-site festival that we're planning to add for mostly kiddie-oriented or family, well, the whole festival is family friendly, but specifically kid-oriented workshops that would also happen at the street level. So in conclusion, we are very grateful that this program has been implemented as it allows us to serve a wider audience and in a safe environment. We hope that the wider community will take advantage of the program, and we welcome any type of collaboration with our neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you, Libertad. Does the committee have any questions for Libertad? Olympia, go ahead.
Hi there. Hi, Libertad.
Hi, Olympia.
I would be reminiscent if I didn't ask the question that all the artists I work with want to know. Are you in any way able to make sure that even though the performance is as free for the public, all the artists participating are paid fairly?
Definitely. Well, with LMCC, we're a partner, a presenting partner, so we don't deal with the commissions to the artists. But I do know that we have spoken with LMCC and they are completely being paid fairly. Many of these are commissions that are born out of grants that we have secured in partnership for many of these artists, which happen to be BIPOC. In terms of Puppet Fringe, we have all of the artists that's one of the main things. Not only are the artists very happy that this actually is happening, puppetry is a genre that many people just think that it's just for children or in educational components, and they don't see the full extent of what the genre is. And this is one of the few places that puppetry artists from both local as well as international not only get to network but present, and obviously being paid. We have a format of a fringe format. An event of such ambition usually wouldn't be viable financially, but because it's a fringe format, our model is that artists get paid $1,000 per small event, and also they get 60% of all the revenue of ticketed events. So that's the model, which is the fringe model of all types of fringe festivals that we follow. And obviously we will also have residency artists, not obviously, but that we have underwritten with grants that we've selected. And yes, I do feel comfortable in saying that this is the case. And obviously, because of Clemente's mission, that's the other reason that this is possible, is that we're providing completely subsidized space. Clemente is is not only a producer, but a venue partner. And if we were to be renting the spaces at the nonprofit rate that this usually goes, this event wouldn't be possible because the cost would be too big. So precisely because Clemente is using part of its operational money to subsidize the venue in all its entirety, that's why there's so much money left over for compensating the collaborating artists.
Perfect. Thank you.
Any other questions for Libertad?
I would like to also offer, I didn't include it here because it's still in the making, but we're also talking, I'm sorry, someone's knocking on my door. We're also talking with the Abrams Art Center of co-producing what it's called like a market performance hybrid event in the streets with called Young World, that they had. It was very successful in early pre-pandemic days. And we're planning to do a second version of it, this time in partnership with the Clemente and also utilizing public open culture street. But that is still in the making. So that's why I haven't brought it forth in full completion. And it's to celebrate hip hop artists and Black entrepreneurs, businesses and artists.
Great, thank you. Olympia, I see your hand again.
Yes, I mean, if nobody else has another question, my second question was for, is there something we should be asking for you guys in terms of open street? I know one of the problem very often is enforcement, especially with social distancing, vaccinations, etc. So does the city support you in this kind of situation, or do you need to provide security?
Yeah, so far it's us. All our COVID protocols have been developed by us with a lot of research and pro bono help from both HR and legal experts. But all our COVID protocols have been vetted and are consistent throughout. And obviously with open doors and now the fact that it's vaccinated, there's a little bit less of tension, but we're planning to continue or the same protocols that we've been using so forth, even though.
But fundamentally, basically, in terms of the program, like we've seen with other programs unfolded during the pandemic, it sounds like they put some money, they give a certificate, but then they don't support. They presume that you're gonna do everything, right? So you don't have support in terms of enforcement or, you know, insurance or whatever. Like the organization who does the event needs to take care of that, both developing and executing and the cost of it.
That's totally true. That's been the case up until now. I wish if you have any insight of any support that exists in that front, that would be greatly appreciated. Including we're just renovating our insurance policy. And this is one of the things that we've just said, yes, it falls on us. Yes.
So you basically, now all the venues that are doing this kind of work, you need to bump up your liability in your insurance in order to be able to be covered?
Definitely insurance companies have bumped up the rates. We can't say for sure how much it has to do with COVID related aspects or just the fact that prices are going up in terms of the liability insurance, but that is the case.
this is something we could discuss with Sapo and then maybe decide if we need to do a resolution, because I know that I heard from many other venues that basically there isn't enough support and guidance on this part. They want you to do everything. They want you to pay the artist, do the event free, keep everybody safe, but they don't really budget for that.
Remember that the way, just to give a little bit more context on our end, the way that we are using open culture, it didn't make sense for us to use it alone. So it's due to the facilities that we have, that we're privileged to have, it's in conjunction with that. So it's as an extension to it, but it wouldn't have made sense to do this type of event if it was just open street alone. It's because it's adjacent to our La Plaza open area, venue space, and it acts as a continuum. And obviously in the past, even pre-COVID days, Clemente had a long history of doing festivals that were open air and they were free to the public. Obviously now it's just many more logistics, and we're using the the adjacent street to extend it and to add those safety measures and distancing measures.
I think the reason for which this is very important is we are going to be seeing open restaurants this summer because they're going to be becoming permanent. So we're going to review it at land use and traffic. But eventually, open streets is a broader program, is beyond open restaurants, and open culture may be something that reoccurring. And we always said that how it was very hard in New York City compared to other cities to have arts in public spaces. And so I know you guys are very busy, but if you keep notes of all the problems, then it's going to be much more easy for us to pass a resolution that helps you in the future about, okay, if we're going to do open culture, let's take care of X, Y, Z, when you pass these legislations and these budgets. So thank you. It all sounds great. Good luck.
Thank you for that, because we will keep an eye out and have the team be more conscious of not just producing the event, but of these items and using you as an ally. Thank you.
Thank you, Libertad, for your presentation. I don't think there are any further questions for you, but thank you for coming tonight and sharing what you're working on. It's so good to see you. And we'll now move to Ana Marie from the WOW Project, and I will pass it over to Andrea.
Hi, yes, thanks, Tariq. Thank you for taking over, and thank you, Libertad, for coming. And yes, and just for additional context for those of you all who got here a little late, or just for additional context, I just wanted to share that I wanted these presentations to occur because we've been deliberating a lot over open culture, and there's many events happening now. There's all this programming, so it's a great opportunity for us to hear what's going on in our neighborhood and how things are going. So with that, Ana Marie, welcome, and I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me. My name is Ana Marie de Quesada. I'm the producing artistic director at the WOW Project Theater. We're located on East 3rd Street between Avenue A and B. And thanks to our district council office, Carolina Rivera, they were able to get our street as part of the open culture program. We have been doing it every Saturday, and we've done 3 already, and every time it's a learning curve. But like Olympia said, the one thing about this program is the onus is up to us to do everything. Like, thankfully, the Losaida streets were able to give us barricades that they had from their open streets in Avenue B by Thompson Square Park. So that was amazing. They let us have 2 extra ones that they had. And then just everything else is up to us. Like, we have to put the barricades. It's our responsibility to put the no parking signs and try to get the cars out. I mean, if we wanted to get security, it'd be up to us to get security. And I mean, all of that is up to us. So it is a lot to put upon us, I think. And obviously, we only worry about the cars in our area, Because to enforce something and you have the boozy brunch crowd around and we don't want to cause a mess or a scuffle or anything like that. But thankfully it's gone very smoothly. Everyone's been really respectful. The neighbors weren't sure what was going on. So that was something on my part. I should have done better about communication with our residents on our street about what was going on in the street and did we really need the no parking down between A and B. So we worked out those kinks with our neighbors, only putting no parking in the area that we absolutely need, which is our staging area, which is directly in front of our street. And we've been doing music performances, being respectful to our neighbors and the sound. We've done just like solo artists, like acoustic guitar, singer, songwriter. We had spoken word our first day with our advisory board member, Dale Orlando Smith and the Koala Foundation. And we're starting now to partner up with other artists and theater companies to be able to welcome them onto our street and be able to give them the assistance, the technical aspect, being that we're a venue, we have all these equipment and the staff to be able to support artists that don't have venues. And we are partnering up with Nuyorican Poets Cafe since their street is not closed. So on June 12th, we're partnering up with Nuyorican and Pipeline Theater Company to invite more of their artists to come in, and we're supplying the support staff and our technical equipment because we could just take it out into the street. We've had to put a little bit more money in the sense of to get chairs to put out in the street. So we got chairs, we bought a canopy tent. So there was more expenses to it that we did have to incur. And right now, being we're not as fortunate as, we don't have La Plaza like Libertad does, but so this is really our only source to this point of getting any kind of source of income. We have it free to the public. We're not charging tickets. We're just asking for donations. That's what we're really asking. We decided that ticketing would be too much. We really wanted it to be a welcome, open feeling. And we really want the neighborhood to feel welcomed and that this is part of something to be supportive and a good thing for the neighborhood. And we have been paying our artists. So we have been doing that, giving them stipends and of course our staff. So yeah, we're booking mainly theater stuff, solo musicians, stuff that's not too crazy. And our local merchants are involved. So they're very supportive. Jane's Exchange, the book club bar, the chai place, and 3rd Street Bazaar and East Village Vintage Collection. So it's been a really camaraderie kind of merchant, Exit 9 Gift Emporium, Charles. And so it's been really a nice group, kind of old feeling of East Village, New York. So yeah, we're hoping each week we grow and grow. We're hoping to invite more artists and give them an opportunity, not only to make money, but to create, a lot of it is a mental health thing as well. And that's it.
Great, thanks, Anna Mari. Appreciate it. Any questions from the committee?
I mean, I hear
go ahead.
Thank you for sharing, the reality of what it looks like in the ground. Living in this neighborhood and having been so lucky as to bump into incredible artists playing for free in the community gardens and in the streets, it's really, a privilege and a luck, but also something that I think we should not be taking for granted. And a lot of the people that we live in this neighborhood, we do that. And I think as a committee, maybe what we could do is use the example of the incredible work that you guys have been doing and others in like Arts for Arts with their festivals in the gardens and others over the years. And maybe, I could see how in other cities they do it with the collaboration of their police department. Like it shouldn't be that hard for the weekend that you have those 2-3 hours of public interaction with the collaboration of, our council members, etc., to come up with the task force and resources that allow you guys to do this work with the right kind of support and resources and not to have to struggle to pay your artists, keep your head, your roof over the head, and keep everybody else safe. So I think, I mean, maybe we don't have time to do today. Maybe we can start drafting something for the district needs about, because in our district, like public space performance is something that reoccurs frequently, and this is an issue that maybe should be highlighted. But in the short term, maybe we could reach out to you and consider writing a resolution about this, because it is really a pity that you guys have to do that. That is incredible for all of us, against all odds. Like, we should be supporting you more. But thank you for doing it and for sharing your story.
No, thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions? I have one, and I wanted to know, Anna Maria, if you've at all worked with Open Culture Works, and for those, if you don't know it, they're a group that was kind of founded to support independent producers and smaller nonprofits that don't have the capacity of, Lincoln Center or something like that to do this kind of work. So I'm wondering if you know of them, if you've tried to engage with them, and if so, if they've been helpful.
We did, and I did meet with them last week, and the things they offered is the things we already have. So the thing we need help most is marketing, getting people out there, and to point out that they could donate, like even $1 or $2, like anything, for people that happen to be there. But I know the thing she was saying that they could support, and she was saying they're trying to build a calendar to help share all the events that are going on around the city, that there's really that one place that someone can go and see all the events that are going on in all the streets. So I know they were trying to really work on getting that up to kind of help have a one-stop shop for people. But the thing we need most, honestly, is like word of mouth and getting more people there. Like we have, but like the support they had was technical and stuff like that, which we have, but it was the marketing is what we needed more support. So that's what they were going to try to help us with.
Thanks for sharing. Yeah, that's definitely a through line that even many members of this committee and previous members have brought up before. So it would definitely be another item for an agenda or resolution. But any other questions from anyone? Sandra, welcome. Hi.
And I'm a president of a resident association. My question is, have you done any outreach into like the NYCHA housing or the resident association? Like, for example, I have a space, a community space that would be open. We would be open to having an event like that here. I mean, that's a great way of getting the information out to people through the various associations. I have 600 families, thousands of people actually, and NYCHA has really tens of thousands of people in just this area alone, and community is great. So I think word of mouth would be going to the leadership in the community as well. Thank you.
Sorry, I was having trouble hearing you.
She said, I could hear her a bit. It was just outreaching to like NYCHA and like community centers and like on the ground outreach to market, because there's a lot of people who live in those neighborhoods that could benefit from the project you're working on and that you're presenting.
Yeah, that's great. I haven't done that, so that's something definitely.
Yeah, like I was saying, just to reach out to the leadership in the community. That's a great way of getting people out there and getting people in the know. And like I said, I have a space particularly that could be used for that. And it would be great to charge like $1 or $2. We really get a lot of response that way.
Cool. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. Any other questions from committee members or otherwise? Yes, Patricia.
Yeah, for both, do you have flyers? announcing the events?
We do on social media. We did talk to community board. We met with Susan and a neighbor, Michelle, and they were gonna help with the flyering and help within the neighborhood on our street. So it took us a while to get everything together, but it took us a while to get the sound permit and all that. But now that we're able to curate ahead of time, we're creating a general flyer so then we could help and ask residents and pass out and put up in places.
Okay, are the flyers only in English or are they trilingual?
That's a good point. I haven't done the flyers yet, but I'm gonna take that note. That's a very good point.
Yeah, it's important to have the flyers in not just English, but also in Spanish and Chinese, because, you know, this is the Lower East Side and this is mainly our population. And, you know, I'm not just speaking to you, I'm also speaking to Ms. Guerra. If you have trilingual flyers, I'd be happy to do an email blast to all of our resident associations in the area, and we could help from there.
Great.
I'd be happy to do that.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Patricia.
Anytime.
Thank you. I see Susan's hand up.
Sure, thank you. So I just want to remind everyone, some of these organizations are very, very tiny and, you know, have one person doing 2 or 3 people's jobs. So, you know, all these suggestions are excellent, but maybe we can all help them with the translation and creating the flyers and all that, because I mean, some of it is just too much to get done with everything else and limited staff and limited resources. So, you know, I think in order to help get these things done, they need our help also.
Thank you. Yes, I'm the only full-timer in my theater. I wear many hats.
Have you reached out to Carlina's office?
Yes, Pedro Carrillo has been in touch with me pretty frequently, so yeah.
Okay. All right, so let us know if there's anything we can do. If it's, you know, even if it's just to do an email blast and announce the events and everything, I'd be happy to do it.
Great, thank you so much, Patricia.
Oh, you're welcome.
And we have a community bulletin board outside our theater. We'd be happy to have your flyer on it. And if you need some Spanish translation, there's somebody with us who'd be happy to do it for you.
Right, thank you. I love this. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I will take all the help I can get.
Tariq?
I have a question just for Susan. Susan, how can like this committee support marketing for some of like these presentations that we have that, you know, they come to present to the committee about the things that they're doing in the community? How can we support as a community board?
Well, I don't know. Well, I'll say, so we met and we talked about things that needed to be done. And I introduced Anna Mario to a resident leader on the block who is going to help do that. I helped with a resident, you know, that it started when I got a complaint from someone that didn't know what was going on. And, you know, we were able to resolve that just by explaining the open culture to them. But we're kind of in the same situation they are as far as resources. So trying to help with, you know, in any way we can, as, you know, as far as resources, both for the theater itself and with connecting with people and that sort of thing.
Okay.
But, you know, I'm going to say there's not a huge way we can help, but I think just having board members, you know, who are here carry out this information, I think is very important.
Got it. And the platform that CB3 uses right now on social media is what, Twitter?
We have Twitter and Facebook. Unfortunately, because of a transition, we're getting a new we're transitioning to a new person, new post on Facebook.
Okay.
But that's a very good point. Hopefully that will be resolved in a week or so, and we will certainly be able to post the calendars. I would also like to try and get information and have a website, put on our website, maybe a section of events in the community.
Okay. I'll talk more with you offline on this.
Sure.
Okay.
All right. Any last questions for Anna Mari? Okay. All right. Thanks, everyone. And thanks, Anna
Thank you.
Mari.
Thank you so much.
Yes. Have a good night. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, so we will move into reviewing our district needs now. I will share my screen right now. Oh, Tariq, could you make me a co-host?
I am so sorry.
No worries. It just says it's disabled. Thank you. Okay.
I was on time this time and was chatting with Jim and forgot my duties.
No worries. All right, so Jim actually put put together a number of edits and
Andrea, can you
of
try
the
to
introduction.
make it bigger?
You want it a little bigger? Okay.
If
hold
you
on.
can.
Is that good?
Yeah, a bit better.
Okay, hold on. Okay. So yeah, so Jim kind of helped us finesse the introduction, and I received a number of your district needs suggestions, and Jim sort of helped me whittle it down in terms of what would be an appropriate district needs ask. And then many of you also had really great ideas that we could use for future resolutions. So I think we can just sort of review what we have and deliberate a bit.
Oh, Andrea,
So-
sorry. It's better for us because usually you wouldn't, once you got the message from Jim, it's as if a draft reso. So you share it with us 24 hours ahead of time. This way we can review it with calm and see what it says.
I know.
We didn't have this chance. Is it cool if we take 5 minutes of silence
Yeah.
and read it? Thank you.
Yes, and I'm really
or you
sorry
can
about
read it
that.
loud too, but I think people sometimes read better on their own. Or you can email it to us if you want.
Sure. Yeah, so let me do that. Let me leave this up and I'll email it you all from my phone. And I'm very sorry I didn't give you all a notice ahead of time. I was just too much coffee. So thank
Go ahead, Jim. I know Andreas, I think she's.
Yeah,
Sorry.
maybe just to help move things along, I could go over some information while you're sending that out. So just to, I know you were looking to get done in an hour. I just want to let everyone, I already explained the process last month, but I just want to review a few things before you go over it. So one is, I may have misspoke. I don't remember because I've given this presentation so many times, but you don't actually have to take a vote on this tonight. It's not a vote. You're just finalizing it. You're kind of agreeing that this is the work that's done for now. The vote will actually occur in October. So it's a little bit lesser of a administrative burden to take care of tonight. You just kind of have to decide this is done. The other piece to keep in mind is most of the updates were responding, actually all the updates, everyone was responding to the pieces that were highlighted last month. Largely, it was just things that needed to be removed because they were very specifically responding to very early pandemic conditions that are no longer relevant. So that's something to keep in the back of mind while going through this. And I think the last piece is just to keep in mind, actually, no, I know what it was. I wanted to acknowledge that a lot of the statistics were already updated we have a staffer working with us part-time from a graduate planning program in the city, and they were able to dig into a lot of the Bureau of Labor Statistics information that was kind of a question mark last time and update all of that. So that's where those changes are coming from as you see them.
So Jim, for instance, one thing that is a little bit confusing, where it says a 11% improvement since July of 2020, and it talks of the sector as a whole. I mean, it's one thing the moment they reopen certain galleries or whatever, so like the sector is too vague, you know what I mean? Does it mean performing like live performance or like what is it talking about? Do you know?
I mean, honestly, no, I don't know. It's
Yeah.
probably...
So like to me, the reason for which I like to read this stuff 24 hours before is because sometimes these are very detailed things and I want to understand what are they saying, you know?
Yeah, you know,
but it's okay if we're not voting on that, we can just read it roughly and then send you questions or comments or to this person.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a Bureau of Labor Statistics subcategory that was being referenced. I just don't know specifically what it was because I didn't do the update, but I can get that. I mean, certainly we can get that before the final vote in October. I'm sure it's literally a matter of just adding in one word to specify. I just don't happen to know it.
It's the references are all at the bottom here. So we could just I could just click on this and try and find the answer if that's what you want.
I mean, I don't think it's so important because, you know, whoever is making the suggestion, that's why usually either they should contextualize it quickly because the sector is something very vague, you know what I mean? So we can't vote on something that is so vague. We need to be specific if we're talking about live performance or if we're talking about something else, but we can fix that. So if you emailed us, we can read it and the people of the public you can scroll down and they can read it there and we can do our notes. I mean, however you prefer.
You mean email it to you right now?
Yeah, I haven't received it yet. Wasn't sure.
I just wasn't able to do it on my phone, and I just I have all these files. So let me hold on a second. Can I I'm gonna share this with you, Tariq, if that's okay, so you can pull it up while I do that really quick. Is that okay?
Yep.
All right, hold on 1 second.
Would it be, I mean, we do this in other committees and I know it's kind of up to everybody, you know, your preference, but would it be helpful? I understand you're trying to mail it out so people can read, but would it be helpful for me to read through it now as well? So one way or another, I think people are on the phone too. You know, there'll be some way for everyone to understand what's in there.
I mean, I think we can do both.
I think that would be great.
Yeah, Jim, one thing that I would do is if I have the document, it's much easier for me than to be writing suggestions or edits or understanding it myself, right? Because I'm thinking while I'm writing it. But if it is just a presentation, I think you should go ahead and read it. But if we are supposed to be submitting things, it's easier if we have the actual document. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think really, I guess, you should have a document because if something needs to change, it needs to change. But generally speaking, you really just need to decide tonight whether it needs to be, whether it's mostly finalized. I think things like correcting that, you know, the specific sector there, we can flag and probably have our staffer that's working on this correct it, you know, tomorrow morning, honestly. So let's note those when they come up, but otherwise, I think of it more in a broad approval sense for now. We can make those corrections as needed. Okay, so let me.
One thing I do want to add is what came up today about open culture in general and about how, you know, there isn't support for performances in public space. So this is a need for us, especially now with the open streets. So we want to make sure that our, you know, NYPD locally or the office of the city council members make sure that they create, this as a service. It would be easy probably for them to assign someone to make sure that, people don't have to go to, maybe Susan, and if Susan can help them, if she doesn't know, she's not there that day. So there should be something more formal about performance in public space and resources, especially in terms of safety.
Yeah, I guess I'm not sure specifically what the need is. I mean, is there a public safety, is there an unmet public safety need?
Yeah, so fundamentally what happens is in New York is unique in big cities about how difficult and actually costly and it's not easy to do things in public space because all the permits, they're complicated and they can even be expensive, especially if you need to assume liability insurance. So the city sometimes subsidizes that for other kind of events, but for a small nonprofit like the ones that we have here, and we love them, they don't always. And so I think we need to make sure that these kind of things, if we want open culture, there should be support. Like it shouldn't be that the small nonprofit needs to put the barricades and say no parking. You know what I mean? It shouldn't be that the small nonprofit needs to pay the liability insurance in order to offer for us free public events. That should be the city.
But that is the case.
I know, and it's not right.
It's not so terrible. It's not so terrible.
So we have
not that expensive.
You can put up your no parking and you can pay your liability insurance.
We haven't
It's not that much money and it's not that much work.
Sorry, say that again, Jim.
We do have a bullet point needed here about equitable funding for small and mid-sized cultural organizations. So maybe it's a matter of adding a little piece to that to say, including, right, the facilitation of open culture. Let's maybe figure that out when we get to it.
Or I would say including coverage of liability insurance and security safety support when performing in public space in the district,
Yeah, so when we get to that one, let's discuss. I think one thing to keep in mind is that in general, and this is a challenge in every committee, we have to come out on the other side of this document with a clear set of top priorities. And I think there's 5 or 6 things here. I personally have no idea whether that's a top 5, a top 3, a top 10 priority, but let's put that on the back burner and come to it when we get to that bullet point and see how it fits in, or maybe it needs its own thing or whatever.
I suggest we just go through this. I know we are trying to stick to a time, so.
Yeah, let me.
By section, and let's just go through it. So Jim, I would say, Andre, are you okay with Jim leading through this?
Oh, yeah, yes, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so your first paragraph, this is unchanged from last year. So in CD3, arts and cultural activities are an important means of preserving and exploring our exceptionally diverse community cultures. Arts and cultural activities are also an important economic engine for our district that has a large concentration of artists and arts and cultural organizations, large and small, professional and community-based, experimental and culturally specific. The next paragraph, we've made updates year. So our artists, cultural workers, and arts and cultural organizations of all sizes were impacted to a devastating degree by COVID-19 in 2020. The performing arts sector was one of the hardest hit industries in New York City, putting cultural workers, including performing artists and administrators, in a vulnerable position. Many artists and cultural producers have had no income since March 2020. The sector lost 56% of its total jobs between 2020 and the peak of sectoral unemployment in July 2020. As of April 2021, the sector had begun to slowly recover with an 11% improvement since July of 2020. However, the negative economic impact on the arts and cultural sector is anticipated to last for months, if not years, depending on sector specificities. So you'll see strikeouts in the next paragraph. That's just because we consolidated that. That information is largely there, but we consolidated it in the previous paragraph. The second struck out paragraph here that begins with the majority of public programs, that was just very specific to what was happening at the time we wrote this last year with all the theaters being closed. And I think now that a lot of spaces are beginning to reopen, it's not as relevant anymore. So moving on, we wanted to focus on this funding issue that came up before. So the next paragraph is city funding for small vulnerable arts organizations is also not certain. The Department of Cultural Affairs, DCLA, primarily funds larger, well-known cultural institutions with less funding typically awarded to small arts nonprofits that are located in CD3. There is a need for equitable funding, support, and resource opportunities for small local organizations in CD3 that focus on the population most impacted by COVID-19, which are low-income people of color. Next paragraph, we just consolidated a little bit. CB3 has identified the following priority needs for arts and culture. So first bullet, and by the way, this is not ranked, this is just a random order. In May 2021, New York City announced the Artist Corps program, which was created to assist with pandemic recovery and provided $25 million of investment in grant funding for local artists across the city. This should become an ongoing program to meet the long-term needs of artists recovering from loss of income during the pandemic. Two, there is a need for more affordable.
Do you want us to give you the edits right away? So this should say works program because that's a grants program. It's not what we asked for.
Let's just go through it. So especially for Crystal who can't see this. So let's just have her hear everything and then go back into it.
One thing that is very problematic for me. Normally this work is done by committee members. I mean, I love Jim and his assistants and everything that they are helping with editing.
That's not true. That's not true.
No, I disagree with you. Making a point of order on that, Jim.
But it's actually not.
This was all like word for word what committee members suggested.
Yeah, Andrea, but the thing is, you didn't send it 24 hours before of time, and it is here. It is okay. I have no problem with it. But now we're going to have to hear Jim read it one more time, and then we're going to spend 1 more hour working on it. Let's do it. But it is definitely not the way to run the meeting. And Jim,
well, we know that you feel that way, and you're legitimate, but let's go on.
I apologize.
Otherwise, we'll be here forever doing nothing.
For neglecting to send it ahead of time, but Crystal is not able to read the screen, and so I just want her to have a holistic view.
But we also need to edit it, Andrea. But let's read it and let's then read it.
Let's hear it first.
Okay, so the second bullet. Okay, there is a need for more affordable and accessible workspaces for artists in CD3. Third bullet. There is a need for more equitable funding for small and mid-sized cultural organizations who are unable to plan for the future since their funding is not baselined. Unlike the cultural institutions group, CD3 has no CIGs. We should maybe just note that we'll put a parenthetical to say what a CIG is, or just to show it an abbreviation. So I'll fix that. CD3 has no CIGs, but dozens of small cultural organizations.
Well, what is a CID?
Cultural institution group. So someone want to explain that? I know it's like the major institutions like Lincoln Center.
I see. Okay, I get it.
Yeah, I don't know the whole list off the top of my head.
I can explain it a little bit, but we can
I
keep going.
I
can.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we can get back to that if need be. But okay, so CD3 has no CIGs, but dozens of small cultural organizations, many of which are Black, Latinx, and Chinese run, and do not have the same access to wealthy donors. These organizations also need better access to cross-sectoral and interagency partnerships, which was outlined as a priority in the 2017 DCLA Cultural Plan. Next bullet, there is a need for increased engagement with the community board for community space and art programming in new developments in the district. It should be encouraged that arts and cultural organizations be included in the planning of city projects and new private development, such as setting aside designated arts and cultural spaces and providing opportunities for local arts and cultural organizations to be involved in the programming and design of new public spaces. Final bullet, and there was some consolidation here. There's a need for Charas El Bohio, a nonprofit community and cultural center that served as much needed access for local web of organizations, stakeholders, and leaders that reflected the values of the communities in which they serve, to be restored in order to address a deeply felt loss in the community. And the strikeouts you see here are just because we consolidated some of those into an earlier bullet point, into one bullet point.
You don't talk about marketing at all?
So me and Andre, well, Andre, do you want to explain this, if you don't mind?
You can explain it. I'll reiterate or add to what your technical explanation for why it wasn't a district need.
So we went back and forth on this to try to figure out whether the marketing issue kind of fits into the format of the district need. And I think, well, where we landed, I think, was that the funding for marketing question is probably more of a policy issue. And the bigger thing, I think, is that we have to prioritize needs, and it can't just be an endless list. And I think one of the things here is it feels very specific to theater operations rather than a broad district-wide need. And I don't think it rest through existing current agency funding streams, which will kind of be the next step with budget priorities. So the sense, I think, is that maybe it's something to be a targeted resolution that goes to the agency or elected official that could actually make that a program that's viable.
Yeah. No, you're probably right. Once the organizations have some funding, they can use it, creatively. And one of the things they could do is marketing. So I think you're right. It's a subtopic, not. I mean, first and foremost, if there was a way to get funding, that would be wonderful. I just have given up on it.
No, I agree with you, Crystal.
I mean,
yeah, and it's even evident people coming here. I mean, even Anamati, for my own professional experience. The first thing they say is
they need marketing money because they know they're never going to get funding. But, hey, if there's a possibility for funding, that, of course, is the most important thing.
For sure. Yeah, I think, yes, we could revisit it at a later date as a resolution topic.
Right. I agree.
Okay.
Andrea, these needs that are listed don't need to be in a particular order, or will they later need to be in a particular order?
So that's a question for Jim. I'm not sure of how that's approached.
You don't have to do it in a particular order. There's no weighted ranking of these. Later on, when you do budget priorities later in the year, that is a weighted priority. So where you'd want to rank them. This doesn't matter. I mean, some committees do that. It ends up, I think, being more of a headache than it's worth because it's not enumerated. It's not like this is our number one need. This is our second need. So most committees just do a list.
Okay.
Without a meaningful order.
Okay. I think if we can, I'll scroll back up to where the need started. It seems like that's where we started conversation for edits and things.
Yeah, thank you, Tariq. Unless there's any other questions about the previous, it was just from what I know, it was just like the specific piece about the sector and defining what that was.
I thought it was clear.
Okay, thanks.
So the thing is, we are reading this for the first time again, guys. So there are some typos, like sizes where seems to be attached. Then the 11% improvement, it is probably referring to the performing arts sector. I mean, to me, I would almost just cut it out because I would just say there is a slow recovery, however, the negative impact, just because this 11%, I mean, I don't know what it reflects. So we can keep it, but we can also cut it. It doesn't add so much value because fundamentally what it says, yeah, things have been a little bit improving since it reopened, but then we know that there's gonna be negative impact. But I think where we need to focus, there are a few things that have been inserted since the last time that are very, very controversial, actually. And I'm assuming someone has submitted them between the last meeting and today, but I don't think we should lightheartedly accept them, like baselining funding. There are different opinions about whether this is positive or not. And the negative reference to CIG, I actually believe it is very important that all of New York City, all the 5 boroughs support the CIGs because they're incredible, and every society needs to have CIGs, but it should have as much funding for everything else too. So it's not, we should not engage into this scarcity mentality, but we should say that no, we need to fund our great institutions that give so much to so many communities in all the boroughs, and we need to invest in the grassroots level. That's the way I would phrase that. And regarding baselining funding, it is really a chicken and an egg. Having run different nonprofits myself, both of small scale or big scale, they're inconsistent. And so baselining them may backfire or create very negative effects. And so you want to make sure that there is funding for grassroots people who are doing the work and want to take it, but baselining things is not, in my opinion, it could be a recipe for disaster. So I don't feel comfortable putting that as a need, or even if we decide to do a resolution, I would like to have presentations before taking a public position on that would be ill-informed and negative.
I see Crystal's phone. I don't know if she had anything to say, but I
don't know what baselining is. I don't know what that means. I didn't hear you say those words. I don't know what baselining is. I'm sorry.
Baseline that they did, can they explain it? Was it you, Andrea, or someone else?
So Tariq, if you could scroll down, because I think what she's referring to is one of the needs, right? The third one for equitable funding. And I don't think that there was anything about baselining, or
no,
yes.
I never heard that.
Okay, so here, I'll explain because this was one of the needs that I had contributed, and I
see in the document that you sent us, the word baseline, it's on the second to last bullet.
Yes, it's on the third bullet. Yeah,
I didn't invent it.
So I don't know if we defined what baseline means, but it's just when you get a certain amount of funding consistently over a number of years. And so for the reason why it's important for a lot of organizations is so that they're able to plan. Right. So like the pandemic is a perfect example, right? Like for most people who had, lost all their earned income, their funding that was baseline was like their lifelines, right?
Yeah.
And the reason, and I agree with Olympia in that I don't think that we should engage in a zero-sum mentality either. I think that CIGs should absolutely receive the same, if not more, especially in this time, as they always have. I just think that the treatment of the programs group is generally, numerous people have expressed that it's very unsustainable and is very difficult, especially for, like I outlined, for Black, Latino, and Asian nonprofits to sustain themselves and to grow, because they're more than just programs, right? Many of them are institutions, and the Lower East Side in particular has a plethora of groups that are small, like budget sizes, 250,000, where any change in their budget means a change in if they can provide funding for their artists, if they can pay for marketing, if they could pay their executive director. So that's why I felt like it was an important need.
I think you mentioned in the first one something about funding the smaller groups as well as the more established ones. I believe you referred to that, and I agree with that very much. I thought it was in the first.
The first bullet point as outlined is about the Artist Corp program, which we can get to later. But
well, then it was in the second one, somewhere in there, in the early.
Right now on the screen we have the Artist Corp programs, the Affordable Artist Workspace, and then the more equity and funding.
Yeah, more equity and funding. I think that's a very good point. It's very important. I think that the problem with the CIGs is they get all the money. I think there's about 10% is divided among all the little ones,
Yes.
and 90% go to the CIGs.
Right.
But I
And
mean, that's been a fight for I don't know how many years.
yes,
The
and
past
it's never
30
been in
years.
according to, from my understanding is that we've not had it as a need. And I think it's an important one given what the neighborhood ethnic
Oh, I see.
composition.
I do too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Olympia, you wanted to respond.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to respond to two things. So one was, I think your description of baselining was a bit vague. It is a term within like the finance committee at the city budget that there are hearings in which you go and you discuss. And there are different streams of funding that are either allocated by the city council or by the city. So it is complex. I think what we are trying to advocate for can be better said by saying that, you know, we want to have, from now on, not to have cultural budget being the first one to cut on every crisis. We want a consistency of funding streams dedicated to culture, and that we do not anymore accept the scarcity mentality. So we want fully funded CIGs and dedicated equal funding for all the grassroots. And by the way, for the independent workers too, because very often the nonprofits are the ones that exploit the worst, their workers. They're worst paid, the people who work for nonprofits, both the artists and the personnel. It was recently in the news too, unfortunately. So the thing is that I feel we can do a better job by advocating exactly what we're saying, by writing it better with more describing what we want, because if you use this kind of term, it can be taken that we're saying something different about baseline. And about the CIGs, my concern, I think that there is a lot to be talked about what defines equity and what defines the BIPOC organization, because we also have instances of organizations, trying to meet requirements for funding by having appointed certain people in certain positions that meet the criteria of BIPOC, but actually being organizations that do not serve BIPOC community, or they're not accessible to low-income people, etc. So I think if we want to engage in that conversation that, as you know, I've been engaging for decades personally with my work, I think we should just say it, just say it clearly. And the way it is written right now, because there was a controversy at the recent city budget. So I want to make sure that we don't seem to be taking one position or the other without really stating what it is that we want. And what we want is funding, consistent funding,
Right.
both for grassroots organizations and the CIGs, because CIGs may not be located at District 3, but I know that, first of all, we have the Clemente, where you work, is a quasi-CIG, like they have a different kind of, they operate out of a building, and so they are a subcategory with a lot of overhead covered financially by the city. And that is something, yes.
Not compared to CIGs, but
No,
go
no, no,
on.
no, it's not compared, but you're not the grassroots organization that needs to pay the rent. Like your overhead, and that's not as a negative thing, is I'm just describing to you that our district happens to be, served by either hybrid organizations, let's call them that, or also a lot of the programming of the CIGs still benefits local residents. So I just don't feel that we should say, oh, CD3 doesn't have CIGs, so we do not care about their funding. We care about their funding.
Right, but I think we need to make the distinction between the things that we want and the needs of the district. So I just want us to focus on that. I understand the nuance here, and I'm trying to figure out what wording would address this. I think
the question is, do we need to do the edits tonight, or since we're not voting, we're going to just
we need to do it tonight because we're not meeting again until this goes to full board. Is that right, Jim? I don't know, maybe Jim left.
Does Olympia want?
You'll meet again, but honestly, you won't meet next month. You will only meet, you won't meet in August, right? No one will meet in August. You'll meet in September and you will have to do budget priorities. I really recommend against dragging this out that long because you've already looked at it last month. You've already marked things for editing and additions, and you're putting yourself in a real bind at the end there to get 2 huge responsibilities finished. I would highly encourage you to finish it tonight. You know, it doesn't have to, it's not the final voted on version, but to agree conditionally on the approval of what's in here.
Can I ask a question? Is district needs means what we don't have that we need? Is that what, is that the definition?
That is a good way to look at it. We
Okay,
often
if
use the
that
phrase
is
unmet
the
need.
definition, then we can talk about the smaller organizations, the great need, because that's what we don't have. We do have funding for the CIGs. We don't have funding for the little guys. So that's a district need. We're not saying that you should stop funding. We don't want to defund the CIGs, but we have a need, and the need is for these little theaters
Okay,
that have
yes.
nothing.
So I have the
I-
document open. Do you want me to suggest the edit and write it and then email it to you if we all agree while I'm writing it, while we're discussing it?
You can put it into the chat if you suggested edit. To me.
The chat only goes to one person.
Which is Tariq, so
It'll
it's okay.
go to me and it'll.
But that's again against, so I send it there and you paste it there, so we can do all night long like that. I mean, I don't have the language yet, I need to write it. We can do a Google Doc.
What if we just delete the piece about cultural institutions groups?
Yeah, that's
I mean,
what
I
do.
understand but I feel like the need for like more equitable funding streams for like small size cultural institutions is greater than, you know, the benefit that residents get from going to Lincoln Center or whatever.
So maybe she could write it real quick, and maybe we'll like what
Okay.
she writes, or maybe we
Sure.
won't. But
Yeah, I was just putting that out as a suggestion.
I mean, we
Yeah,
can
no,
discuss it and Rick can type it, guys, in real time out there on the document. So, and to be honest, Andrea, I mean, come on, don't be dismissive. Like if somebody goes to Lincoln Center, you know that these people, the big museums, make all sorts of tours. Maybe you're not yet part of the people who have children, but a lot of children benefit in this district by going to
yeah,
the
but they have the
Museum,
funding they need. They have the
going to the
funding.
Bronx Zoo for free. And so I just don't want to.
I'm not saying that we should defund the CIGs. I never said that. I said
Right.
that we're talking
Just
about
made
the needs of the
comment
district.
about Lincoln Center, and it was not accurate. It was not reflecting
I'm
the
just
benefits.
saying that if we eliminate the piece about the CIGs, we don't have to go into that because I don't see anyone coming to our board, and I understand the value of cultural institutions groups. I just think that we should focus on this one thing, and if we want to advocate for support for something else, we can do that on another.
I'm gonna just remind everybody that to keep yourself muted and let the chair recognize you to speak.
Yes, but we're working on a document in every place, in every committee. In the past 6 years that I follow this community board, when we're working on an item, we just, either you can write it and you can suggest language and we can say yes, no, etc. But we cannot be recognized every time. Otherwise, we're not working.
Olympia, but right now we have 3 committee members talking over each other, and that's not helpful right now. So I'm gonna refer to the chair to figure out how she wants to operate the meeting.
Thanks. I think it would be better if we just spoke one at a time, and also let other committee members speak too.
Will someone start doing the editing, guys? We don't have the whole night.
Olympia, so you're not going to send Tariq any edits, right?
No, because we need to do it, right? So let's do it.
Andrea, do you want to share? Do you want to do the edits, or you want me to?
You can share the screen with me, and I'll do them.
Okay, I'll stop.
Or yeah, you can stop your share, and I'll just do them. Okay, all right, so we're on this third need, right? And there's a concern over the CIG, so
Yeah, I did.
all right. So maybe, let me just delete that. I'll delete no CIGs. Do not have access to wealthy donors. Is this more agreeable?
Can you read it because people cannot see?
There is a need for more equitable funding for small and mid-sized cultural organizations who are unable to plan for the future since their funding is not baselined. I can go in and elaborate and redefine the word baseline and not use inside baseball.
I
Is
understand the
inconsistent from year to
meaning.
year.
Yeah, I think the way you can just say it is not consistent and ongoing or something like that.
Inconsistent from year to year.
That sounds good.
Is everyone okay with this?
I think it's great.
Can you read the whole thing now?
There is a need for more equitable funding for small and mid-sized organizations, mid-sized cultural organizations who are unable to plan for the future since their funding is inconsistent from year to year. Community District 3 has, or Council District, CD3 has dozens of small cultural organizations, many of which are Black, Latinx, and Chinese run and do not have access to wealthy donors. These organizations need better access to cross-sectoral and interagency partnerships, which was outlined as a priority in the 2017 DCLA's cultural plan.
You got a thumbs up from Thomas. I don't know if you can see it.
I did see that. That's why I skipped cultural, because I saw it out of the corner of my eye. Thanks, Thomas.
You also have a thumbs up from you.
Yeah, so do you want to do the equity fund only for the organizations here and do equity funding when we're talking about the New York City Artists Corps? Because the equity always includes the worker too. And here we are only doing it for the org. So we can do equity funding when we do the bullet point on artists, or do you want to put it here?
I'm a little unsure what you mean. Do you mean you mean separate from it, or you want to tie in this somehow? I'm a little
So
not sure what you mean.
Usually when you use the word equity funding, here you specify that you want it for small and mid-sized cultural organizations, and equity funding also has to do in the arts and sector also with the art workers. And so because there is funding for them, not for the overhead and the administration. And so, but I think we can either introduce it here or just edit New York City Corps and add it there, so we can do it there.
Are you saying equity funding or equitable funding?
I mean, you can use it depending how you write the sentence, but fundamentally the problem is that very often, to being an artist, you are so underpaid that of course it is impossible for people of low-income background to become artists or to make a living as an artist.
You're never going to get the city to give you enough to make a living. I think that you should fund the organizations, because you're talking about these tiny little organizations. She said there's only one person there doing a ton of stuff, and then there's some part-time people, and then there's a lot of volunteers. I mean, and they're nowhere. They don't have money for anything. So they need some equitable funding. That's what they need. Then you can complain later that they're not giving it to the right people or something. But
so I can answer.
You got to start with.
Go ahead,
start with the organization.
Yeah, no, Crystal, what we're talking about is actually a program that this has been happening for a decade now in the artist sector. Equitable funding means when they give you a grant, they basically can give you extra money that is securing that you can pay fairly people. And this way you can include, lower income people of color, people of marginalized communities in the workforce that you employ. Otherwise,
that's
you don't have a pool, because if you don't pay, who you attract is privilege. And so that's why there have been a lot of organizations.
so that's what you are looking for. In other words, the only thing you want is to pay people.
I think the distinction here that's being made with a need for more equitable funding for small and mid-sized cultural organizations is the kind of comparison to larger organizations, so that the larger organizations get more money than these small organizations. So kind of having equity across all organizations in receiving funding would have focused more on your small and mid-sized organizations.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you get too complicated.
I don't want to belabor this point, but I actually don't know what equity funding is. I mean, I don't think I'm inexperienced on these issues, but I don't know what that is. I've never heard of it. I do know that
Equitable.
No, but Olympia seems to be suggesting that there's a specific program that somehow funds equity in some way.
That's what people are advocating for.
Right, but that's
anyway,
not.
We can call it equitable. It's not a matter of how you call it, it's how we describe it. But I think we can just work it into the first bullet point and leave it down there like that, only about the organizations. And then in the first bullet point, we can just elaborate on that. That is about workforce anyway.
Okay, all right. We'll just move on to the Artist Corp program then, since everyone seems okay with the bullet point 3.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So for Crystal, I'll read the first bullet point again one more time. In May 2021, New York City announced the Artist Corp program, which was created to assist with pandemic recovery and provided a $25 million investment in grant funding for local artists across the city. This should be an ongoing program to meet the long-term needs of artists recovering from the loss of income due to the pandemic.
That sounds wonderful.
I can take a knock on editing that one. Tariq, do you wanna type it as I saying it?
Andrea is
I'm typing it, so
okay,
type, yeah.
So I would say something like the New York City Artist Corps program that will be launched in June 2021 will be dedicating $25 million in grant funding for local artists across the city for pandemic recovery.
What's the difference between what you just said and what was written before?
I mean, fundamentally, I'm just trying to edit. It's the second part that is very different. But so actually the 25 million are not for artists. A big chunk of them are gonna be taken as overhead. Only like 15 million will end up going to grants. I mean, it's too detailed. I was just trying to make it more precise and I was gonna change it. And fundamentally, what we need to advocate is that not being a grants program in the future, but a works program like CETA was. And that was what we had discussed in the past.
Well, that's not what they're talking about here. That is, if you want a CETA, then that's different. That's not what's being asked for.
No, the New York City Artist Corps, when Mayor de Blasio put the announcement out, she said that it was like a WPA style program in response to a lot of people who rallied for that. So what we're saying, what I was trying to edit is to say that it is a positive step. However, we need the funding to be ongoing and to be transformed into a real artist works program like CETA, you know.
Well, that's what you think should be there instead of what's there. They're not asking for that. But listen, I agree with you, but that's not what is being asked for. They're talking about little organizations that don't have enough money, and that they're not talking about a works program. That's a whole other kettle of fish.
So, Olympia, do you want to finish your edit and then we can just take a
Yeah.
look at it.
Was
So,
this sentence correct? The New York City
What-
Artist Co-program will launch in June 2021 with a $25 million
Well,
allocated in grant funding for local artists across the city.
Stating a grant program because the funding is not going to be unfortunately given in grants. It will be, a lot of it will be given to agencies and places. So just as a grants program.
I lost a little bit of what you said at the beginning, but you said what about the grant funding?
Just say so the New York City Artists Corps, I think you're missing an S, like I think it's Corps. I think the New York City Artists Corps program will launch in June 2021 with a 25 million funding allocation for a grants program to local artists. 25 million.
And then you want to strike this out?
Allocation. And that one, yes. And then I would say this should become, this funding stream should be continued. This funding stream
should be continued.
be continued and transformed into a works program for artists, impacted by the pandemic. And I think this is more accurate what we were discussing in the past. And we can, if we want, we can add a reference to CETA, as we had said in the previous meetings, or we can leave it like that.
Andrea, you have Thomas's hand.
Yes, I see him, Thomas, yes.
Yeah, and I just wanted to clarify if I'm understanding correctly. We don't have any authority to disperse these funds. So are we like advocating towards a specific legislator, or like how are we? I get the description.
I have an
Yeah.
answer.
These things.
Yes.
In
So
describing-
Jim can raise, can answer, and he has his hand up, so yes. Jim, go ahead. You're on mute.
I want to apologize first because I unfortunately have a hard stop tonight and I'm going to have to leave in a minute. I do apologize about that. I just want to flag to be careful because we're kind of on the border line right now, I would say, of the difference between advocating for policy, which we would do through a resolution, and identifying a need, right? I thought the need was that there are artists recovering from lost income that will be served in the short term by this existing program, and their needs are not going to disappear after this initial round of funding is dispersed. So I understood the need to be a long-term commitment to fund these artists. And I would say you don't have to get into the policy prescription or where it's going to go or what office it's going to fund this. You just want to identify the need, which I understood to be the long-term economic recovery of artists put out by the pandemic. And you could keep it simple. That would be my 2 cents.
If we do it like you say, Jim, the only difference is then we shouldn't reference New York City Artists Corps because it's a very specific program of grants that will actually not address the needs of all the artists because it's very small. Some grants are going to be up to 3,000, and an ongoing works program like CETA was really helped the people. This New York City Artists Corps is an eyesore. It's a shame. It's a sham. So,
yeah, I don't know where that came from, honestly. I just because I've been doing so many of these, I forget like where that language came from. Someone must have submitted it. I don't remember is the problem. I'm sorry.
So we can say what Jim said and just take out the reference to New York City Artists Corps and say,
okay,
we need an ongoing artist works program,
okay,
like
got
CETA.
it. I do want to answer Thomas's question though, to be clear, which is, and before Jim goes, is that Thomas was asking, where does this district need go to, like the district needs statement go to? It's used by, from my understanding, it's used by researchers It's used by funding authorities. It could be private foundations. It could be city government. It's available for anyone to reference, but it is supposed to be a statement of need. And like Jim has said many times, it's not meant to be policy. That's what our resolutions are for. Jim, yes.
I'm
You're
sorry.
still on mute.
Yeah,
Okay.
I just like to expound on that formally. We publish it on our website, which is just its own thing. That's just for anyone to look at, anyone to use for reference, any organization to use for reference. But formally, it is submitted to the Department of City Planning and the Office of Management and Budget. OMB actually does more of the budget priority stuff later, but they are like kind of involved. Really, DCP takes this and they put it on a platform that they have for all the community boards, and it becomes just like this public document that they use to kind of just document the needs of all the districts, of all the community districts in the city. Now, there was another, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. There was another piece of this question. Like why the focus on needs, unmet needs versus policy? I do actually believe that may be even in the recommendations from DCP, but largely that's just been an internal practice. There was, I forget when, years ago, there was some decision made about the format to primarily make it bullet points, primarily make it brief, and primarily make it focused on unmet needs versus policy. I forget if that was decided at exec or in a resolution. I know someone else can answer that, but that's the background of where that comes from. And I'm sorry I don't have the details off the top of my head.
Thanks, Jim. Olympia.
It was there from before.
Okay. All right.
I give Thomas' question. Thomas, did they answer your question? Because I thought his question was also about the specific artist corps, who decides how it's distributed. Was that the question?
No, I know we're addressing needs, but it just sounds like we were getting specific to things that we couldn't enforce. That's why I was asking. So, I mean, if we're talking about there's a need for funding that's equitable, that's fine. But I don't think we need to get as specific, because once the need is put out there, it'll be addressed by the persons who can make those decisions. That's all, because I just felt we were getting very specific about stuff that might have transcended the scope of our committee.
Thanks, Thomas. I appreciate that. So for the sake of this, of fixing this one need, you all agreed that we should strike out any reference to the Artist Corp and just reference the need for a works program. Yeah, okay.
That's a proposal by Olympia. I'm not
So
sure.
that was Jim's proposal. My language is there. I'm happy with the language I suggested, but I'm also happy with Jim's proposal.
So if we went with Jim's proposal, it would just be there's a need for an artist works program.
So basically, we could make it a bit better and say, since CD3 is also, location and also workspace for a lot of artists that have been impacted, we feel that a works program for impacted artists like the CETA program would be recommended, with a focus on, what do we want to call it, equity, equitable, whatever, in order to make sure that, a diverse, thriving community of artists can continue being an artist and survive.
Tariq, you seem to have something to say. I wanted to invite you in case you had some thoughts.
I'm okay with what's here. I'm just saying, is it possible to say this funding stream should be continued and become an ongoing program to meet the long-term needs of artists recovering from loss of income during the pandemic?
I would just say transform, because this program is really not good. It's just grants. And they can be as little as $2,000, $3,000. They want people to pay.
But should we be, is the ask that this program, the Artist Core, become a more focused works program?
Yeah.
Again, I want us to consider the need, so I almost want to change like there, like what Olympia said just a minute ago, there's a need for continued funding and the transformation of a works program,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, I would say transformation of a works program. I would say to meet the long-term needs, because it's going to be long-term, you know.
Okay, which of which artists would benefit or something like that, of which artists would benefit from
Impacted
I'm sorry?
You can also say impacted artist.
Which should be yeah, I'm trying to like figure out this sentence though. There's a need in
CD3 for a continuation of this funding stream.
of which impacted would benefit from a true, or I don't know how to say it. Would benefit from a transformation into a works program.
And you need to take out the first sentence, right? You didn't want that reference anymore.
I'm neutral on it.
We can take it out.
Right, but then the first part wouldn't make any sense, so I would have to rewrite it.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Well, to get the funding stream of which impacted artists would benefit from the transformation into. Yeah, that makes sense, Andrea.
Okay, so then just delete all of this.
Yeah.
And I'll leave the reference there.
So one thing you didn't fix yet is in a grants program, it's not grant funding. We wish there were the 25 million given to the artist. The 25 million is for the program. Only 10 million are going to end up in the artist's hands, or 15.
Okay. All right, and then this is okay to delete?
Yeah, this one we clean. New City Artist Corps program. And I'm not sure you need to call it program. You can say the New York City Artist Corps will be launched in June 2021, or will launch in 2021 with 25 million allocated in a grants program for local artists across the city. There is a need in CD3 for a continuation of this funding stream. No, I mean, it's now very confusing. I would say there is a need in CD3 for a, maybe we can say for a continuous works program. And then don't even reference the thing, because the reality is the New York City Artist Corps got money from federal aid. So it's a one-off of the pandemic. So it couldn't really be. So what we want is a similar stream. We cannot have the same stream. So that's why I want to be precise when we say that. The New City is for launch.
So, okay, again, I'm just trying to figure out like
so what you
how
need
to state the need. Because we can't go into like the funding.
But I already told you
who's the president.
Yeah. No, but the problem is you just need to, what you're saying now doesn't make sense. So if you just change slightly where it says there is a need in CD3 for a works program, for a, for the impacted, for a works program for the impacted artists that will use also an equity lens, because I think we all care a lot about that.
Okay. Okay, I'll read it one more time. The New York City Artist Corps will launch in June 2021 with a 25 million allocated to allocated in a grants program for local artists across the city. There is a need in CD3 for a works program for impacted artists that will use an equity lens.
For an ongoing, or for a continued, or an ongoing.
I'm
Or no?
gonna put ongoing because there's no continuation of anything, so.
Or for the long term of the recovery, something like that. Because ongoing, maybe it's then infinite.
Okay, so there's a need in CD3 for a long-term works program.
Yeah, during the recovery.
Rather than that we'll use an equity lens, I would say that will be implemented with an equity framework.
Sounds good.
What does that mean? An equity framework of who? Of who for what?
So I think a way you could answer that, and we could go into it in this, but generally speaking, people of color were most impacted by the pandemic. So Black and Latin,
Oh, is that what it
Latinx,
means?
cultural workers, you know, they're also restaurant workers, they're frontline workers, and aside from being
Oh,
that, so they're most
oh,
impacted.
I
And
see.
yeah,
Right. So, in other words, a theater artist should have equity funding along with restaurant workers and et cetera.
well,
that
in
what
this
that
case, we're
means?
talking about a works program, so we wouldn't be talking about the theater or nonprofits or anything like that. We talked about that in the third bullet point. This would be specifically targeted at working artists, like individual.
Right, but I mean work artists equitably funding to other industries. That's what that means. Is that what that means?
I'm not sure. I don't think it has. I mean, it has to
Well,
do
then
with
what does
industry, and that
equity
it's
mean?
again
Does
in
it
this.
mean people of color equity funding or industry equity or what?
That's a good
When you
question. When I think of it, I definitely think of it as a like, you know, in terms of like racial and economic justice, but
oh well, maybe we should put that in because it's not clear what you mean by equity. Little groups to big groups, or if
yes,
it's racial, then we should put that in.
yeah. If I could just say something, we have a guest who's a new member, Jeanette, who gave me a message. Hi, thank you for being here. Thank you. Jeanette sent me a good little blurb to use for we're talking about equity, and if it's okay, I'll read it, which is using an equitable approach accounting for disparities in race and gender.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
That
I agree with the
sounds
confusion.
great.
Sorry to chime in, but I agree with the confusion. Equity as a term, like people think about that as either unions or like being a part of some kind of organization or getting like stock in a company. So using the word equity in this sense
Oh,
like
well,
was
what
very
about
confusing.
equitable?
Right, exactly. So that's why I'm just suggesting that we use the word equitable. I'm sorry, I don't know who's speaking
Yeah.
because your name is not on your Zoom thing, but I just
I'm
wanted to say I
sorry, it's
agreed with.
me. Yeah.
I heard your
Yeah.
I heard your concern.
Yeah, thank
Sorry.
you for pitching in, Jeanette. Yeah, I definitely agree with you that was also my confusion. I was thinking about like equity in the union sense, and it was confusing to me. So thank you.
No, but by the way, but we also want to have the union part of it. Like you do not want an arts program that exploits artists. So fair, we can also have like fair treatment or something, you know. But usually they should do that, you think.
Just say equitable. It's great. Well,
Using an equitable approach accounting for disparities in race and gender. Thank you, Jeanette.
I think that's great.
Also, welcome to the board. Excited to have you. Okay, should I read it one more time through?
I'm just
I'll
trying
do
to
that.
figure out now with the specification of Jeanette, that is great because it helps address Crystal's question. Then we should just have fair treatment or wages or something like that. And I see her, she's writing something. Thank you, Jeanette. I think you should open the chat when we work on that. In many other committees, the chat is open this
I
way.
can't.
No, not now, but in the future, in these meetings, you can open the chat this way. People suggest language, and then you can copy paste it from different members.
I would do that, but I don't have authority to do that. Yeah. I just, yeah. Unless Tariq knows some kind of trick, I don't know. I think
Could you
that this
read
is all
it? Could you read it?
preset.
Could you read it?
Oh,
once?
yes, the New York City Artists Corp will launch in June 2021 with 25 million allocated in a grants program for local artists across the city. There's a need in CD3 for a long-term works program during the recovery for impacted artists that would be implemented using an equitable approach to accounting for disparities in race and gender.
Sounds great.
And would commit to fair treatment and benefits for the artists.
Oh no, it's you know.
But CETA was fair treatment. You had benefits, right?
It's so simple the way it is. It's simple. It implies that. I wouldn't get into all that. It's very good the way it is.
Using an equitable approach. And like what, like if we wanted to talk about equitable wages,
Oh, brother.
I'm trying to think of an easy way to. I'm sorry, Crystal. I understand the need for it. Could we say like just a quick? And anyone else feel free to pitch in how they feel about this, but like maybe like with a priority of project or what's it called, like, because in a works program, right, you would be employing someone for some kind of specific thing, so it would be that like maybe that I'm thinking of wage, but I don't want to get in wages, working artists for a greater economy that has a rubric for a sort of like a living wage, or equitable wages as a proportion to the like employer. I don't know, Olympia, do you have any suggestions of a phrase you would throw in?
That dancers use is usually proper pay, fair treatment, and access to benefits. If you want to go the union way, they would say things like prevailing wage or negotiated minimums or things like that. But, you know, I think just by saying fair treatment and proper pay and access to benefits, you are covered.
And fair treatment and pay.
Yeah.
Okay. Should I read it one more time? Or are we okay?
Yes,
okay.
Read it one more time.
The New York City Artists Corp will launch in June 2021 with a $25 million allocated in a grants program for local artists across the city. There is a need in CD3 for a long-term works program during the recovery for impacted artists that will be implemented using an equitable approach, accounting for disparities in race and gender, and fair treatment and pay.
I just don't think, I mean, what are they not going to have fair treatment and pay? I think it's silly. It's a silly addition, my opinion. Unnecessary. And
I mean,
even no, anyway. I don't care. Why would they not have fair treatment and pay? We're talking about equitable
mm-hmm.
pay. That's very important. that we stress that.
Yeah, I
But
think that's part and partial, but not like comprehensive.
okay.
Anyone else have any thoughts on this they would like to add? Tariq says thumbs up.
I think Zanette was trying to say something.
I like kind of agree with Crystal. Like I guess I understand that there's a history of artist work programs that mistreat the artists that they serve, but I think the idea that you should stand up a works program, but then you wouldn't have the mission to make it fair and would like be counter to the objective of it. So like it's kind of like writing details to the work program, whereas like I thought the purpose of the statement was just to say what the core need was.
I mean, we can take it out, but you should know the reality on the ground of the artist is that they're exploited. They're not.
And I
I
totally
know, but
understand that, but I think
But so what? That has nothing to do with what we're asking for. I mean, everybody's exploited and it's all terrible. But so what? That's not, it's irrelevant right now. We have a need. We express it and we expect them to be fair and treat us fair. If they don't, we'll scream and yell.
If I'm correct, I feel like Jeanette is suggesting that this is like a little bit of a redundancy to add the last 3 words here or 4 words. I'm not sure. I would
Yeah.
understand why that would be, but I don't think being redundant in this scenario is necessarily lethal. So
Okay, put it in.
okay. Okay. All right. Should I read it one more time over? I feel like we're kind of finished with this piece now.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. The next one is very straightforward, but we can deliberate it. There is a need for affordable and accessible workplaces for artists in CD3.
Workspaces.
Yes.
Cool.
Okay. These last 2 are leftovers from last year. And I just, yeah, Jim suggested, and I agreed that we should just leave it. I'll read them out loud. There's a need for increased engagement with the community board for community space and art programming and new developments in the district. It should be encouraged that arts and cultural organizations be included in the planning of city projects and new private development, such as setting aside designated arts and cultural spaces and providing opportunities for local arts and cultural organizations to be involved in the programming and design of new public spaces.
I think that's really wonderful if they would do it.
Yeah, that's always the question, right? How, the how.
We should
Okay.
be involved in it.
Okay, so I'll read
What's
the last one, which is the one that's been in the district needs for many years already. I'll read it out loud. There's a need for Charras del Bohío, a nonprofit community and cultural center that served a much needed access for a local web of organizations, stakeholders, and leaders that reflected the values of the communities in which they serve. To be restored in order to address a deeply felt loss in the community.
Yeah, well, that is true. That's wonderful.
So, I mean, I guess the only thing that we are missing is, you remember how we had said, do we want to add something about the public space performance, facilitating that and creating support? Because where we could actually maybe add it easily is at that tiny bullet point about affordable workspace and say, I mean, and after that, there is also need for funding support for public space performances that covers liability insurance or security needs that independent artists and small nonprofits often cannot cover, you know.
It's a couple of $100. That's what liability costs.
Yeah, but you need to have insurance, and this is really like for an established organization, that's cool. But a lot of artists, just the idea of buying liability insurance means they're not going to perform. And instead, I think in our district, we kind of love people performing, you know. But I'm happy not to add it. It was just brought up.
Every organization has to have liability insurance. Can't
Yes,
operate
it's true.
without
And
it.
also,
Illegal.
also if you are like an independent, like even unincorporated nonprofit, you can have, or even if you're a small nonprofit that like can't cover their insurance, the DCLA, you can request for the DCLA to cover it for you. You just have to go, you just have to request it.
I think what we can do, guys, is we can schedule presentations and do a resolution on that, because it's not that simple as you are describing it, because it has been brought to our attention repeatedly that the process is arduous and it doesn't make sense and it should be streamlined. And after all, it is the public space, so it shouldn't be that complicated. And I'm not sure it's always $200, depends where you are and how many people are coming to your event.
Yeah. Yeah, I think having like Sapo or someone come also would be good, because our district is always going to do outdoor stuff, outdoor performances, festivals. It's But so Olympia, you feel like
we don't need to highlight
it's not
as
necessary.
a need, because we can just do a resolution, you know, the next few months. And I think beyond having Sapo, you heard from the Wild Project that we could invite other people who have encountered these problems to explain why is it complicated.
Right. Okay. Jeanette sent me a little something that might like, hold on, I'm sorry, I'm reading it. There's a need to
I just suggested transposing that sentence to there is a need to restore Charas El Bohío, a nonprofit community. It'll just read better.
There is a need to,
Restore.
You just say it later passively, and yeah. And then that way you cut out the whole second, like that other,
this piece? Yeah.
Exactly.
Perfect. Thank you. Good catch. Okay. Okay. All right. Any last questions or concerns? Should we go over this one more time?
No,
These pieces?
I think it's very clear.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's clear.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Great. Great job, everyone. I think this is a really great district needs statement, and I'm sure that many people will reference it in other ways. Yeah. So let's catch the last 30 minutes of the debate.
Oh no, you need to do a roll call.
Okay. So vote to adjourn. Yes.
No, you need to do a roll call and then we do a vote to adjourn.
But we don't need to vote on the DNS.
No, Jim said we don't need to vote today.
Right. So we would just do a roll call vote for what then?
It's not a vote, it's a roll call for presence. If you're not marked present.
Okay. Okay. All right, hold on, give me a second. All right, yes. All right. Andrea Gordillo, present. Olympia Kazi.
Present.
Wendy Lee. Tarika Ramos.
Present.
Thomas Rosa.
Present.
Ricky Wong. Crystal Field.
Present.
Okay. All right. Okay, and I'll send you all the meeting minutes from last month and this month.
And welcome, Zanette.
Yes, so excited to have you. Thank you so much for your help.
Thank you so much. I'm not actually on this committee or anything. I just got appointed, so that I just want to jump into the meeting.
We're inviting you, even though you got.
Please join.
Why don't you? We want you. We need you.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate the welcoming out. The warm welcome.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great night.
Goodbye. Good night.
Bye.